Well, welcome to Module 2, where we're going to be talking about suicide. And just that word alone can affect people differently. And we want you to be more comfortable with the word because unfortunately in our culture today, more and more people have considered suicide more than ever before in the history of mankind. And we actually see that here in Australia, more people die from suicide than they do from car accidents. And it is not an isolated situation. In fact, I read one research paper that said for one suicide, 115 people are directly impacted, which means that co-workers, friends, family, and any church or sporting community that you're involved with will be affected when someone takes their own life through suicide. It's sort of a bit like a pebble going into a pond. It has a ripple effect, and that ripple effect can be ongoing. So we want this module to help you be better informed and more confident with dealing with someone who has suicidal thoughts, what to look out for, and what to do if that happens. I love those documentaries that look at the world and the animals and the plants. But one of the series that I saw was on animals of prey. And they would always look out for the weakest, the one that was injured, the one that was the oldest or the youngest. And that actually happens even in the spiritual realm. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And it's our job to be protecting of those that are around us, because people's mind may not be sober and may not be as alert as it could be. And we need to be aware that the enemy, the devil, doesn't want us to live our life to its full. So I'm going to give you some information, looking at some of the myths, what to do and what to look out for if those occur. So let's look at the myths. The first thing is, only experts can prevent suicide. Do you think it's true or false? All the evidence that actually says that it's false. It means that you and I, lay people, could actually help someone go through it. It doesn't mean that experts can't do it, but you don't have to be an expert to help prevent someone from taking their own life through suicide. People who talk about killing themselves won't actually do it. Well, it's true and false. Some people who talk about it, and maybe people say, oh, they're just trying to get attention. Whereas some people might be saying, I'm talking about it and I will actually go through with it. So there's a little bit of a balance there that you need to be aware that it could happen to you. And you don't want to jump to conclusions or assume that they are trying to get attention. People who talk about or attempt suicide are just seeking attention. Similar to that first one, yes, they may be just seeking attention and it could be just what they need. But it's certainly got your attention, hasn't it? And there is a need for that. They're crying out for help. And sometimes it may be true and other times it might be false, meaning that you know, their attention has been the only thing, by doing this, is the only thing that has arrested everyone to actually say, hey, help, I need some help. I'm putting up my hand. And now, what are you going to do about it? So it's that true and false. Most suicides are caused by one sudden or traumatic event. False. It's not most, but sometimes it could be caused by a traumatic event, but it's not most. Sometimes it's an accumulation of different things over a period of time that can result in someone wanting to take their own life through suicide. Most suicides occur with little or no warning. Well, it's true and false. It could be that it's blindsided everyone and no one had any idea of it. And I've spoken to a number of people and friends of mine that someone that they know and cared for, they had not an idea or a clue. It just happened. Whereas other times it could be that it's actually been building up over time. So sometimes there will be some warning, sometimes there is very little or no warning. And this is a really big one, and I could talk about this for a long time. Talking about suicide with someone at risk will plant the idea in their mind. Can I tell you quite categorically, that is false. You can't plant a seed of an idea in someone's mind by just talking about it. They're either thinking about it or not. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, about how do you approach that. A suicidal person clearly wants to die. Well, sometimes it could be true, and other times it could be false. Maybe it's because they needed some attention. Sometimes it's clearly that they just wanted to end it all. Whereas other times it might be just that I don't know what else to do, and this is an option for me. If a person has been depressed or suddenly seems to feel better, the danger of suicide is over. It could be true. They're getting the right help, the right medications, the right support, and they are getting better and they're working through it. Where it becomes false means they've made a decision, and that decision has resulted in them thinking, I've got a date in mind, and that's the date I'm going to follow it through with. It doesn't mean that, you're not out of the woods. It means that you have to be very vigilant when that happens. If someone tells me they have thoughts of suicide but asks me not to tell anyone, am I bound to confidentiality? The answer is clearly false. If someone shares with you something that is going to be danger to themselves or somebody else, you need to report that. And you need to find people that you trust and that can actually help you navigate that. Because if you're not equipped, you need to find someone that is. So confidentiality, even though they might say something like, if I tell you, you're not allowed to tell anyone, I'll stop being your friend if you tell somebody else. My response would be, I love you or I care for you so much that I'm willing to sacrifice our friendship, and I am going to tell somebody about this. So it's really a precarious position, but when someone's life is on the line, you need to get as many people to support you as you can. So what may lead someone to want to take their own life through suicide? It could be an impulsive or an irrational act. It could be a carefully considered thought. They've actually thought it through, and this is something that they want to do. It could be a direct result of a mental health illness. It could be simply an attempt to end pain, physical or emotional or relational or financial pain. Or it could be a combination of a perfect storm. One thing led to another thing, led to another thing. As I said earlier, when you hear the word suicide, different people have different thoughts about that word. Some people will come to the conclusion it's really selfish, whereas other people might consider it to be selfless. Selfish because it caused the ripple effect of pain for those left behind, but for the person who actually considers taking their own life through suicide, they're actually thinking they're caring and loving their family so much that it will relieve them of the pain and anguish of having to deal with that person every day. So I'd love you to actually consider where you land, where you are on the spectrum of, do you think it's selfish or do you think it is selfless, and why? The bottom line is, when someone is going through suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation, you may hear that coined phrase, it is often as a result of feeling isolated and disconnected. Because we all need connection, we all need community around us, and when we don't have that, we feel like we're all alone and nobody cares. When we're feeling isolated, that also compounds things, when we're the only ones suffering. And there's various examples of isolation and disconnection. It could be physical. It means they can't get around as much as they would like, whether they're in a wheelchair, or they're physically bound because of pain. Or it could be that they're emotionally disconnected, that they actually are sad all the time, they don't have any friends, they don't have any way of connecting with other people. It could be cultural, that they actually feel away from their family of origin and where they fit into the world, and so they can feel really isolated and disconnected. It could be relational. It could be that, someone actually has left the family home, or a husband or a wife has left and they're feeling relationally disconnected. Or it could be, as we've said earlier in the module 1, is that they actually feel spiritually disconnected because they don't know where they fit. They feel lonely. They don't feel welcome. Where do they fit into the world? And they feel that God has abandoned them also. So these things, and you might be able to think of other examples of ways of people feeling disconnected and feeling isolated. So what do you look out for? What are some signs and symptoms that you would actually look out for of someone that you know or care for, and it may be even a work colleague? So we'll start off with some of the risk factors. Some of the risk factors include a mental illness. They could have been suffering from depression or anxiety or panic attacks. They could have gone through a recent trauma. It could be through a divorce or someone that they care for has died. Or it could be that they've gone through their own personal health issues. It could be a loss of a job. It could be that they're being bullied. That could be at work or at school. It could be that they've had a previous attempt or someone in their family has had a previous attempt. They might be feeling marginalized, that they don't feel where they fit into the world, where maybe because of the cultural aspects, where do they fit? They're marginalized. Or another risk factor could be alcohol or other substance abuse. And all of those combined could be actually risks that the person that you care for or love are actually thinking or considering taking their own life through suicide. By themselves, may not be, but as I said, there could be the perfect storm, and it may be the straw that broke the camel's back, especially if they lost their job or their finances had changed or a relationship had been strained. All of these combined can actually result in someone taking their own life through suicide. So what are some other things that you could be looking out for? What are some warning signs? It could be they might start joking about, I may just top my head off and joke about it. And it may seem to be flippant at the time, but that could also be a little bit of a warning sign. They may be increasing their drug use or they're increasing their use of drug of dependency. Or maybe they might just start taking risks. They might be driving faster, or they may even choose spontaneously to buy a motorbike, and it's something that's completely out of character. They may want to do some risky things like jumping out of aeroplanes. Now, I've jumped out of an aeroplane. That doesn't mean that I wanted to take my own life through suicide, but combined with other things and those risk factors and those other warning signs, maybe just a little bit of a red flag flying just to be aware of. They may increase their moodiness. They may be withdrawing from family functions or social functions. They may even just start saying, instead of saying see you later, they might start saying goodbye. Or they may even start giving their possessions away. It might be a favorite possession. It might be a trophy. It might be a picture, or it may be their pet. These are all warning signs. And I know of people who have had a family friend or a neighbor or a relative that they didn't see any of these signs, but in hindsight, retrospect, they go, that makes sense. And then they can start feeling like they let them down. They let somebody down. And that is not the case. Because even at your best, even if you were alert to all these things, it doesn't mean that you could have stopped them. But being aware of it is one thing. What do you do with that after the fact? A couple of other things of tipping points of someone who may want to take their own life through suicide would be that their mental health has increased and their difficulties, so if their depression is very, very difficult to handle, or their illness, whether it might be cancer has returned, or whether their disability, whatever that may be, has increased. That may be the tipping point. There may be someone significant in their family, or it could be a famous person has taken their own life through suicide, and that could actually tip them over the edge. Or it could be a traumatic life event, such as divorce, or someone that they care for has died. And those that are imminently at risk, they actually express their intent to die. They have a plan. They have the means to take their own life, and they have the opportunity. And they become more impulsive, more aggressive, more antisocial. And all of these things combined could actually mean that someone has determined that they could take their own life through suicide. But as one of the myths that I shared before, if things were going downward and then suddenly going up and you're thinking, well, risks have been averted, that does not mean, because they may have actually concluded that I have made the date, I have the opportunity, I know the means of which I'm going to take my own life through suicide. So we still have to be always vigilant. So here are 3 things, and I'm going to give you the 3 A's of what you can do if someone that you know has suicidal thoughts. The first one is ask. The second one is to assess the situation. And the third and final one is to act. So what do you do? Well, the best thing to do is actually saying directly, are you thinking of killing yourself? Now they can have one of 2 responses. It could be, what are you thinking about? No way, I'm not even thinking about it. Well, I'm concerned. I'm actually I've been worried about you and I need to ask that question. You don't want to use words such as, you're not thinking about doing something silly or you're not thinking about doing something stupid. No, you need to be very direct and ask the question. Because this may be the first time they're confronted with this situation. Oh, now that you mention it, yes, I am. And then you can get the right help. The next question you need to ask or assess is really the how, when, and where. If they've actually said, yes, I am thinking about taking my own life, the next question is, how do you think you might do it? Where do you think you might do it? And when do you think you might do it? These questions actually make them be on notice to actually think, oh, wow, I haven't even gone that far. I haven't even thought that. And that alone could confront them with the reality that you are there to come alongside them and to help. The third and final area is being acting. The things that you should do would be to get help, because you can't do it alone. You need other people. You need a community around you to support you in this situation. You need to be able to stay calm as best as you can, to really listen and validate their experiences. And you need to instill in them some hope. And most importantly, you need to look after yourself, especially if this is a prolonged situation. What you don't want to do is keep it a secret, and you don't want to try and fix the problem and try and sweep things under the carpet. Oh, you'll be all right, and belittle their experiences. And you don't want to just share with, I know somebody, I know something about such and such and such and such. That's gossip. You don't want to do that. We all need a support network. And I'd like to put down a hand and having 5 different things. We need family and friends. And if they're a teenager, they need a safe adult to come alongside them. They also need to have access. And here in Australia, we have been greatly blessed by having a 24-hour hotline. And there are plenty of resources available, which I'll give at the end of this module. At the end of the day, suicide is never a solution. It causes more problems and more pain. But suicide is a permanent solution to often a temporary problem. And so as you intervene, as you assess the risks, as you ask the right questions and act appropriately, if you don't know what to do, we'd encourage you to ring 000 Emergency Services. They are better equipped to come along and support you. So if you're at any doubt and you feel like you're overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, call 000 and get the right help. Because we all need connection, and we need to instill in hope. And hope is derived from a relationship with at least one caring individual. And if you are that person, what a privilege it is. The greatest gift that you can give to that person is your presence. You may not know what to say, but just being there could be the greatest thing that you could ever give that person. And you'll come alongside with them and help navigate whatever they're dealing with and to get the right help and support. This idea of hope is something that is very difficult, especially when they're going through a difficult time. But the scripture says in John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. But Jesus came that you may have life and life to its full. I hope and trust that you will be able to help and point people to Jesus so they can actually have life and life to the full. Our website at families.org.au has a variety of different resources on this, and our website has some free downloads and podcasts. And if you need to speak to someone, we highly recommend the Christian Counselors Association of Australia. Their website is ccaa.net.au. And on the screen, you'll see a variety of different organisations and websites that we would highly recommend you connect with to get the right help. Well, that concludes our second module on talking about suicide. Our third module will be talking about grief. We hope you'll be able to join us.